1 week ago, Magnus, you crossed the finish line as the fastest ever Dane in iconic Hawaii Ironman. So, first of all, how is the body, and are you ready to hammer once again? Because I know that you're also going to the T100 final.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. The body is very tired. I think more so because of the travel home from Hawaii than the actual race. I have never been as jet lagged as I am now, so I apologize if I don't make much sense in this interview. But yeah, so body is very tired, but I'm happy and proud of my effort. And yeah, I'm racing in 2 weeks, so that will be interesting. Right now, yeah, there is some way to get ready, but I'm sure we'll manage.
One question that came to mind is, of course, as all other triathlon aficionados out there, I saw a lot of interviews during race week, and I was there in 2019 when Frodeno won his last victory, and I felt back then that the tension was really, yeah, you can really feel like there was a lot going on, that there was not this friendly atmosphere that I maybe sense there is now here in 2024. So is that also your takeaway, that people were quite relaxed, even though uh, everybody has a lot on stake here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wasn't there in 2019, so I can't speak how the atmosphere was back then, but for sure now, and it has always been my like when I have been in the races, it has always been really friendly and good banter.
Yeah.
And like, of course, we are competitors, but during the lead up, I think we are good at not taking, yeah, just being relaxed and having fun with each other. I met Sam out on a ride, and we rode together for half an hour or something before he had to make a turn. So, yeah, I'm not sure the old guard, the old German guard would have been able to do that, for instance. So it shows that there is huge respect for each other. We all know what we are going through, and I think that is, yeah, one of the reasons for the respect. And we just, but then of course, when the race comes, there is no mercy. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's also, I think that's a good thing. It's relaxed and funny outside of the race, but then once the race comes, I want to kick everyone's ass.
Yeah, I love that. Speaking of Sam Laidlow, his approach to this race was quite the opposite of yours, I believe, because he really, raced right into the big events in top shape in both T100, which he won in convention fashion, and then the next one, which was, I think, that was Las Vegas, right? He
Yeah,
he was quite
Ibiza. Yeah.
close. Exactly. But you, on the other hand, I don't believe in your professional career that you had such a long build up, about 12 weeks with no competitions at all. So maybe can you explain some of the thoughts behind this? Of course, you and your team, your coach, had a plan with this. So talk about your build up to Kona.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the planning of the season, that with so many top level races nowadays, I think it's impossible to be in peak shape the entire year.
Yeah.
So it is very tempting for professional triathletes to target everything and really want to do well everywhere. But what we have seen is, at least with how I respond to training and racing, is that I really perform well after big periods of uh, solid quality training. So, for instance, Miami this year, I just came off basically, yeah, after off season ended in maybe December. I basically had a really, really strong period of training leading into Miami, and
Mhm.
obviously did really well there. And the same goes for Challenge Roth this year, where I was in altitude going into the race and really was focusing on that race. So I think we have seen that I tend to perform very well when I focus on few races and really, yeah, dig in the training there and motivate myself for those races. But generally, of course, I am very proud of how consistent I am in like when I'm racing. But for sure, I tend to perform to the best of my ability when I have been training very well and have been having a good time to kind of get the headspace right and so on. So that is one of the reasons why we decided to do a very long block of training leading into Kona. And we decided to do it in altitude. Basically, yeah, I should say for me this season, Kona was the biggest goal
Mm-hmm.
of them all, like on another level than any
Yeah.
of the other T100s and also Challenge Roth. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, even though it maybe sounds crazy, the entire season has been a lead up to Kona, and everything we have done this season has been about preparing for Kona. So leading into Miami, what we really focused on there was we knew it would be a very, very hot race. So we took the opportunity to dial in and really investigate heat training and dig into cooling strategies, which proved in the race to work really well. And then the next A race for me in the season was Challenge Roth, where we decided to kind of make a trial of the altitude protocol we wanted to use leading into Kona, because it is a very high altitude where we were staying, and it is a little bit risky. So we really wanted to try it out beforehand
Mm-hmm.
to make
And
sure.
not to interrupt your
Yeah.
fine speech here, is it Font Romeu or what? Where are you guys staying?
No, no, it was in Colorado in the
Yeah, yeah,
US.
of course.
So 2,600 meters of altitude. So Font Romeu is only 1,800 meters. So it is quite a big difference. But we
Mm.
really, yeah, what we found there from the altitude stay before Roth was that I responded really, really well. So yeah, that was good to see. And then we basically did the same thing going into Kona with some small adjustments from the takeaways we learned. So I feel like everything actually has been leading up to Kona.
Yeah, that's super interesting. A minor question before we move on to the next topic. Very aware of cooling strategies, and actually, I had the pleasure to watch Kona Nights, the annual Kona Night at the Fusion Heads quarter, where we talked about your decisions to have a certain speed suit which is the opposite to the one chose by Sam Laidlow. You are of course racing in the same brands, but there's something about the I think it's called the paddles on the suit. Was that due to cooling when you chose the suit for this year? Were you
Yeah,
aware of
so
this aspect?
we were doing a lot of testing, obviously, with Fusion
Yeah.
and mostly with aerodynamics. So,
Hmm.
and then we decided to sew in a lot of small pockets in the
Yeah.
suit, different places strategically placed where we know cooling has a bigger effect. So people might have seen me putting ice down the chest of my
Yeah.
suit, or in the back there was like a big pocket where I could have ice. And also the cap I was wearing was very special, so I could kind of collect a lot of ice. And so everything from the suit with aerodynamics, of course, in mind, but also how can we cool down the best.
Yeah, very interesting. And one final question about cooling and heating. Maybe it's just something that I'm particularly aware of this year, but it seems like people have really doubled up on bottles and where to storage water, liquid, stuff like that. Is that your impression as well?
Yeah, I think, yeah, obviously, now that the chest bottle or chest like camelbacks down the chest
Yeah.
is forbidden, a lot of people try to get the same effects from placing bottles in that
Hmm.
area. So I think some of it is because of that, but also for sure some of it is because people maybe are more aware of how much we are actually sweating
Hmm.
during the race. Like my sweat rate on the bike is more than 2 liters per hour.
Hmm.
So that is more than 8 liters of fluid I have to consume during the
Wow.
bike if,
Okay.
if I want to like be net positive going into the run,
Hmm.
which is a very good idea. So I am not sure how much people were digging into those kind of details in like earlier on.
Magnus, you're always really detailed, really aware of your bike dynamics, and every year you find new details to, of course, to save some power or aero gains, whatever. But this year you may have, of course, that's at least that's what the Ironman felt. They thought that you went a bit too far. So my question for you is, when they decide, okay, this one will not will not go through our criteria for a bike, is that full panic mode, or what exactly was the procedure after they turned down the original bike that you showed up with on the Big Island?
No, so we always had a plan B.
Yeah,
So I
okay,
had
okay.
another bike I knew would be very similar to the one I've been
Mm-hmm.
racing on. So yeah, we knew it would, or we wanted to reach out. Like a lot of people, if you look at it, turned up to the race, checked in their bike the day before without asking permission of anything new they like introduced.
Okay, so you
We
actually
wanted,
showed up yourself and said,
we
"Hey, can you please
yeah,
check if this is okay?"
I felt like it is a nice way of behaving if you ask people in advance instead of just showing up.
Yeah.
I think that is common, yeah, that is good style if you can say that. So we were asking Ironman way in advance if they could approve this,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a lot of conversations with them, which eventually turned out that they, unfortunately for me, didn't approve the bike, which I think is a shame and don't agree with. But that is how it is. But we always had an option to use the like original bike.
Yeah, I love that. So not to throw anyone under the bus here, but of course, when you walk through the bike racks, did you maybe observe a few bikes which might not have passed the eye test for the Ironman people? What's your gut feeling there?
Yeah, I definitely saw some things where the argument they used against me is that there is a rule in the Ironman competition set that says untraditional or unusual equipment or bikes are not allowed unless they are permitted by the head referee.
Hmm.
And for me, yeah, I saw some things that I would categorize as untraditional as the one I wanted to use, but I think Ironman should redefine their rules and make them more clear, because a rule like that is essentially just says that they can do whatever they want, and that it is up to the gut feeling of the head referee, which
That's Jimmy Riccatello who has to
uh,
approve.
yeah, and I think there should be some guidelines of
Hmm.
what untraditional or unusual equipment means, because in a way you can say everything that is new is unusual until it's been used. So in a way, Ironman would, if they wanted to, just be able to say nothing new can be introduced because it's unusual. So it gives them the full power, which is fine. But for me, I think there should be some kind of criteria, or like some certain things where is the line. I'm all in for rules and strict rules, but we need to know where the line is. And I think a lot of the rules in the Ironman competition set is not very well written and can be interpreted as people want to.
Very interesting, Magnus. A details and numbers guy like yourself, of course, is prepared for every sort of conditions. And this year was really unusual when we talk about the wind. Hawaii is so known for its crosswinds, and you expect to have headwind most days, and even some years you can have headway in both directions. But this year was really about the low wind conditions, and I want to ask you how much extra gear do you carry for the big island, and when compared to race day did you know your bike set up, and talk about this a little bit maybe?
So we have been like, whenever we've been in the wind tunnel, this year. We have been trying to optimize towards Kona
Yeah,
conditions, whatever they might be. They can change
yeah,
on a daily basis, which we also saw when we were on Hawaii. I had an engineer with me that were riding the course on different days and measuring the wind and the wind direction and wind speeds, and it's crazy how much it's changing, like even throughout the same ride, the wind can
yeah,
change. So it is very difficult, but most of it is done from home. Like the suits also has been optimized for Kona speeds
hmm,
and everything on my, yeah, basically the bike when we go to the wind tunnel is optimized for, of course, the speed we are going, but also the angles, like the yaw angles that the wind hits the rider. You can kind of see the most common ones, but as I said, they are changing
yeah.
a lot. So on race day, we ended up having basically zero wind, which was quite crazy because the days leading in, like the 2 weeks I was on the island, it was actually quite windy. So I was really crossing my fingers for
Yeah,
a lot of wind. But then when we started biking, I could quickly see that it would be a very, very fast day.
yeah, exactly. You and I think Laidlow as well had the same idea about creating what is not officially a disc wheel, but something that comes really close to a disc wheel. Is that a new step towards aero gains, or can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, that was something our common head wheel sponsor had introduced already in Kona 2 years ago.
Okay.
22 was the first year where I had some conversations with the owner of Head, asking what is the definition of a disc wheel and
Hmm.
what are the limits for how high can a wheel be in Kona where discs are not allowed and so on. And then they came up with that idea. So we have been, yeah, we used it in Kona, also same in 22. So it is not something very new.
Let's move on to talk about the race itself. Of course, Denmark did unusually well this year with three guys in the top 12, and I also had the pleasure to interview Matthias and Christian Högenhau. And Christian told me that you guys were swimming together when all of a sudden there was a full stop during the
Yeah.
swim, which actually turned out to be, yeah, maybe a defining moment because that was the exact time when Laidlow decided to push up front, and the group sort of broke into two. So can you talk about that moment maybe?
Yeah, so from the swim start, I got off really well and was actually lined up beside Christian Blumenfeld and Christian Högenhaug, both Christians,
Yeah.
and we were actually Høgen and I were swimming really well the first until the turnaround point. We were almost, yeah, we were even in front of Christian for the first maybe 800 meters. So I knew we were in the front pack when we were at the turnaround,
Hmm.
and it felt really comfortable. So I was starting to get some uh, feelings that we might be able to make it in the front pack. But then when we turned, it is also very unlucky or coincidence. You would almost think that Sam saw what happened, but it so happened that Sam decided to basically go full on attack mode.
Yeah.
Of course, he knows that it is a very critical part of the swim is the turn, so he knows that the probability of congestions and stuff like that happening is very big. So that's probably why he decided to do it there.
Yeah.
But when uh, we made the turn around the coffee boat or whatever it's called, uh, I don't know exactly what happened, but I was in the front pack, and then basically I was standing still for. It felt like a very, very long time, but probably was maybe only a few seconds. But those few seconds are enough to like make you lose a lot of positions.
Mm.
And that was really annoying, but I still thought, because I couldn't see any gaps in front of us still, so I still thought that we would maybe be able to make it with the front pack. But then after the turn, I could see that the guy I was on the feet of had opened up a gap to the person in front of him, and it was already pretty big. So I knew for me it wouldn't make sense to try and close it because I probably wouldn't be able to, and it would cost me a lot of energy. So
Yeah.
I was, with the rest of like going back to the pier, I was just hoping that the person I was on the feet of would set a fast enough pace that we wouldn't lose too much time. But it is annoying, but also it's something I have to be better at
Mm.
because I feel like, and I think it's the same with Christian Høgenhaug as well, we have a really high level of swimming, and the swimming itself wasn't the problem here. It was more experience, and like maybe I could have, or Christian as well, could have been more aggressive in the turn and wouldn't have been the ones that got kind of
Yeah.
drowned during the turn. So it is those small things that I think you learn when you are people that have been in the sport their
Yeah.
entire lives and maybe comes from short course. It's just second nature to them to do those things and
Exactly.
be full on during a moment like that. But for someone that has come into the sport very late and didn't swim and so on, it's not really natural for me to be aggressive. And sometimes I pull
Back off. Yeah.
myself back off a little bit, which I shouldn't do. So in a way, it's also my own fault, but
Mhm.
it's still very. I think it
Exactly.
was
So
a
it's almost like in the tour when the yellow jersey is very conscious about being in the front
mm,
third of the peloton if crashes and stuff like that happens. So very important and very interesting. So right when this happens, does your mind immediately switch to your plan B? Which is, yeah, of course, to save energy and do what you've done so many times before.
yeah. I think it is a much more important moment in the race than people or than it seems on the surface.
Yeah.
Because if I was staying in the front group and hadn't been dropped the 1 minute and 20 or whatever I was, we were out of the water behind the front pack. Then for sure I would have been able to ride away with Sam in the
Yeah,
beginning
I believe so too.
because basically we were riding the same pace the first 90K, and
Hmm.
then I don't think we would have uh, gone so hard. Maybe at least
Hmm.
we would have shared turns, which would have saved us both energy. So and so it's really a defining moment and something I've been thinking a lot about since
Yeah.
what that I should have been more aggressive in that turn. But yeah, so then, as you say, my mindset set kind of shifts because I know I won't be able to swim back the front pack
Yeah.
because Sam is like leading the front pack and
Yeah.
basically
Machine.
hammering everything he can, and I'm not as good of a swimmer as he is. So
Hmm.
then, as you say, I know I can bridge to the front group,
Hmm.
but it would have been a different scenario if I was with the front
Exactly.
group.
Can we talk about T1 in Kona versus every other race? Because if you've seen you in Roth or any other big Ironman, it's like you've been taking it really easy, slow, almost and smooth transition. Whereas in Kona, it seems like every second counts. So talk a little bit about why that is and how you sort of experience that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been different if I was in the front group.
Yeah.
The group I was like the group that ended up swimming behind the front group that I was in wasn't
Hmm.
very big. So actually, I didn't, and I also lost some stupid time actually, but I didn't hurry more than I would in other races. Maybe if I was in the front group, I would have tried to gain some position so I could position myself better jumping onto the bike so I didn't have
Yeah.
to overtake the entire group. But here it was more. I also feel like sometimes if I run too fast in the transition and really like hyperventilates jumping onto the bike, it can be difficult for me to put down the power
Yeah.
instantly when I start biking. So I didn't rush it. I just yeah took my time of course, trying to do it as fast as possible,
Hmm.
but not over exerting myself, because I knew it would be important that I was on, like putting on some good power straight from the beginning of the bike.
Yeah, exactly. So the next key moment on the bike is when you reach the front group at around kilometer 40, where the guys are riding on a hill, and you, instead of what you've maybe done in the past, take a few deep breaths, settle in, and then attack. You go straight through, and Christian Blumenfeld sees this immediately, try to jump on your wheel, and everything is basically carnage there. So,
Yeah.
so how did you experience that decisive moment?
Yeah, so I'm closing the gap pretty easily to the
Yeah.
front without pushing, and really, of course, we were pushing hard, but it was quite controlled because I knew it was a big front group, so it was important for me to have some energy
Yeah.
to overtake those guys. And actually, when I catch the front group, I sit there for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but I found myself getting frustrated already in that short period of time because I had to basically block both my brakes a lot of
Oh, okay.
times because I really felt the pace was slow at that point, and I maybe should have had a little bit more patience in that moment. But it's also difficult because I already in town, I got news that Sam was basically doing what he did in Nice, and he was already 2 minutes in front of
Oh, okay.
anybody
Yeah.
else. So it's easy to say now that I maybe should have been more patient, knowing that Sam blew up. But in the moment, I felt like I had to react on that situation. And then because I was racing to win the race, and
Hmm.
that is very different than racing to come top 10, for instance. If you're racing to come top 10, you can be much more conservative and see how the day unfolds and have a strong second half of the ride, and maybe also on the run really pace, just do your own thing. But
Yeah.
if you are racing for the win, you need to stay in your own comfort zone, but you also in some way need to react on what's going on
Of
around
course.
you.
Yeah.
And I was maybe a little bit scared, too much scared of Sam
Hmm.
from what he did in Nice last year. So, and given the fact that I felt the pace was slow in the group, I immediately got the thought that would be bleeding time to him if we
Yeah.
continued like this. And I felt really good, so I decided to overtake the group, which was quite a big search,
Big effort. Yeah.
very big effort. More than 20 guys, I believe, in the front group.
So,
Uh,
so this, of course, if people listen to this, it's just the amount of power. I've also heard this talked about in other podcasts. Is super hard. It's maybe, yeah, it's not even a handful of guys probably in the world who is able to do this. But obviously, your ability to push high wattage is also on a very elite level, even also compared to pure cyclists. So you're able to do that. So you saw that impact have immediate effects, or did you bother to look back, or did you just focus your eyes forwards, or what?
yeah, because one of the other things was that Christian was in the group,
Yeah.
and he's a good runner, and Patrick as well. So I saw when I was looking behind that Christian was trying to follow, which was the exact same scenario as 2022.
Hmm.
It was quite funny because it was basically exactly how the place I ended up attacking, and I got really a lot of flashbacks to the race on Hawaii in 22 where I was
Yeah.
riding super hard to drop Christian. But I felt this year I had the upper hand in some way. I could feel he was trying to go with me, but I could still see he was not riding. Like uh, if you are feeling well, he would have closed the gap immediately and been sitting on 12 meters. But
Yeah.
it was as if the gap always was like maybe 20 or 25 meters. So I figured he was really on the limit. So I just carried on and eventually ended up gapping him as well, that was perfect for me, I think.
Mm.
And yeah, if I had seen how he was feeling and that he was basically vomiting all over the place
Yeah, exactly.
during the moment, I would maybe have been a bit more like I also wanted to push hard afterwards to really gap him. So it was full gone conclusion that he was like it was a big gap.
Exactly.
Uh, and I also, yeah, then I got the news that I was actually down to 90 seconds to Sam, which so I was gaining time on him just before we started riding up Harvey, which was
Yeah.
nice as well. But we were also pushing really, really big power. So when we turned around at Harvey, and I could see the gap was maybe around 2 minutes, and I had lost some time again to Sam. I had to make the decision that it was too much and that he probably would take much more time on me going back.
So you eased back on the way down from Hawaii?
Yeah, I had to. I was still
Yeah.
pushing well there, but I felt it was unsustainable for me to do that pace for the entire way, and I was
Okay.
riding alone. And that was pretty tough to make that decision. I was maybe hoping that Sam would kind of wait for me when he saw that I was. I know it sounds strange if he would wait for me, but I think still that when we turned around at Harvey, if he had waited and we had been able to work together, I think we could have built of course, he ended up building a really big gap, so he didn't need me at all. But
No.
that was what I was thinking maybe would happen. But yeah, then we wrote down Harvey, and when we hit Queen K, I really started to struggle. And yeah, that was the last hour of the bike was absolutely terrible.
That was pure. One question about the bike, because you guys don't need to stay in groups at all. But if we think about 2022 drafting penalties, which didn't always make sense, actually, you had one yourself.
Hmm.
How aware were you of staying off any possibility for receiving a card this year?
Yeah, I was very aware, and
Yeah.
so that is the benefit of riding alone. Is that
Hmm.
also just when I was in the group for the few minutes I was there, I was already stressing out and getting mild panic attacks if I saw a red light and so on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was nice not to have that worry. Yeah.
Exactly. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the mental side of the sport, because maybe it's not only the very impressive effort that you put in on the bike and eventually on the run. It's more like the insane amount of work which is totally wasted as your numbers come crossing down. You talked about in the post race interview that you couldn't even like hit 200 watts average for maybe the last half hour. You have Christian Hergenhau and Robert Kalin breathing down your neck, so everything is basically wasted, and you sit there in T2 wondering if it's even worth fighting. You went all in for the win here, and now maybe will struggle to even stay within the top 10. So can you talk about the mental toolbox and how you convinced yourself to go on from there?
Yes, I can try. It's
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know still how I actually managed to get to the finish line in the way I did. So it's also
Cheers.
sometimes hard for me to understand. But yeah, so it started on the bike already when I think started the first part of me struggling mentally was when I decided to not follow the pace of Sam anymore and ride a bit easier. And that kind of developed into when I hit Queen K that I was falling, like blowing up, like I've never blown up on a bike before. It's the first time. I think that's also what made it difficult to
Yeah.
understand. It's the first time I've struggled on the bike like that in my entire life, and I started getting pain in my left glute, so I had
Oh, okay.
struggled sitting in the arrow position. So I was wondering out on the bike if I even like I really wanted to just sit in the side of the road and make a because it was just so painful everywhere. Uh,
Yeah.
but somehow the bike I managed to complete. It was really tough, but the biggest moment was when I was in transition and wanted to like basically throw everything away and drop out. But I made a decision to. I thought I how much I had invested in this
Hmm.
of energy, not money, but like just time and energy and everything, and how many people have done the same. So I made an agreement with myself to run to the turnaround point in alley and then maybe drop out there. That was like
Yeah.
my thought initially, but at least run to the turnaround point in alley drive and then see where you are at. And then I started running and it felt I wasn't running very fast in the beginning, so I felt dizzy and I felt completely out of energy and I didn't have like any spring in my step at all. So I thought it would be a very, very long marathon. And then I started seeing the people I know and love out on the course, and I saw how much they still helped me and wanted me to finish this. I think we were all expecting it would be a long day by then, but they still were cheering on me as if I was about to win the race, even though I was like fighting for, at that point, I was out of top 10, I think. So
Yeah.
that really, it didn't motivate me at the time, but it kind of forced me to, or that made me carry on. So the team around me is a huge part of why I ended up, uh, first of all, not dropping out, and secondly, how we all, also them, turned it around. And then, so that is the first thing. And then also the talks or the work I've done with my psychologist, Mikkel, in the lead up. And actually, the past many years, we've been talking about how to handle difficult situations. So we're really, it was in that moment, it was about accepting the feelings you have, but trying to not react on them because uh, that is kind of the definition of mental strength is that everyone gets the negative feelings. You can't really control which feelings you are getting, but you can at least try to control if you react on them and how you
Hmm.
do that, and then try to focus on other stuff. So the work I've been doing with Mikkel has also been really helping me out in that situation. So I think those are the two main things that kept me moving forward in the beginning.
Very interesting, and also the fact that your impatience on the bike really didn't work out at all. But on the other hand, your very very patient approach on the run paid off big time. So when did you realize that hey, actually this could end up in a podium if everything's keep up the way it is right now?
Yeah, I think uh, I'm not sure if I was patient on the run because in the moment, of course, when I started feeling better, I started becoming more patient. But in the moment, literally, the only thing I could do was I didn't have, I wouldn't be able to run faster than I ran. So it wasn't because I was
You were on your limit actually.
it wasn't because I was holding back at all. I was running. It felt comfortable, but I wouldn't have been able to run out in a faster pace. It felt this was kind of the pace I could sustain, but it felt like I knew I would be able to sustain it in a very long time, but I just
Yeah.
didn't have the energy or anything to run faster. So I'm not sure how patient I was on the first part of the marathon. Definitely when I started and my stride started loosening up a little bit, and I maybe also the cooling strategy started to work, and I got a more clear vision of everything. Then I would say patience started to play a part. But
Mm.
then I turned around on alley, and I was getting passed by Christian Blumenfeld and a lot of other guys in the beginning of the run. But at the turnaround point, where you get a second chance to see the gaps, I saw that okay, they are actually not really far away from me, which I thought was surprising because I didn't feel I was like running that well.
Mm-hmm.
So the gaps started a little bit stabilizing on the way back on alley drive, which gave me a little bit more mental like motivation, but still I was struggling big time. But then, yeah, a few kilometers before hitting Queen K, I started actually gaining time on people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that was then just picking off one person at a time, which was really motivating. And I was suddenly in the top 10. Going up Palani, I caught Matthew Marquardt, who was in fifth at the time, I believe.
Exactly.
So then all of a sudden I'm in the race, even though I feel like I'm not racing. I felt like I was just surviving at that point.
Yeah.
And then on Queen K, I start getting the news that Sam has blown to pieces and that the podium would be a possibility. I didn't believe them in the beginning, but then yeah, I caught Sam who was walking and was in third or fourth place at the time, and then I really started. Then that was like when the podium started becoming a possibility. Then it was as if everything kind of switched in my mind, and yeah, I could find a new gear, and yeah, I knew
And
at that
also
time,
push, maybe not the pace, but the effort.
yeah, at least push, like have something. Yeah, I was, yeah, really push the uh, mental how much I was struggling to a new level that I probably haven't tried before. So yeah, I was basically running faster in energy lap than I was in the beginning, the first half marathon, which is very difficult to do. And also on the
Yeah.
Queen K back home was probably where I was running the best. So that gave me a whole new hope and yeah, energy.
Did you realize that Rudy von Berg was the one pushing from behind because you guys had yeah, a few duels over the past few years?
Yeah, so I caught Leon down in Energy Lab, and the way he was looking when I overtook him, I knew he wouldn't, or at least he would have to pull something crazy off, because he was, when I overtook him, he was standing with his head dipped in the ice bin and looked
Yeah.
completely cooked. So I thought he wouldn't be able to follow me, and then that was when I started thinking, oh, second place
Yeah. Yeah.
is now not secured, but now I'm in second, and this is really really good. But then
Yeah.
they told me that Rudy was actually still there. I hadn't focused on him at all because I was just focusing on overtaking one guy after the other. So I never kind of looked back or got splits from behind. But then I said Rudy is actually only 40 seconds behind. But then in the energy lab, I ran really well on the way out of energy lab on the hill out. So I almost gained 45 seconds on him on that part. So I had 1.5 minutes, I think, going entering Queen K again. So I knew if I kept that pace, which felt reasonably manageable at that time, then he wouldn't be able. But he's still, Rudy is such a tough competitor in that way. He's always there at the World Championships and the big races, and he's pretty really solid also on the later stages of the races. So you should never underestimate him in the last part of a big race.
Exactly. Can we talk about your emotions crossing the finish line? Because to be quite honest with you, you looked smashed and not celebrating anything. But I believe if you know have worked so hard for a win and then comes in second, it almost feels like a defeat. But yeah, one week has passed. Are you able to look at it a little bit different, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, uh, I felt in the moment that it was a win,
Oh, okay, really, yeah.
because yeah, I had settled already in the transition. Like, this is going to be a very long day, and it's
Mm-hmm.
important for me and for the future of my career and my mindset that I get through it. So when you settle for that and kind of yeah, manage to switch it around, it's almost, I would say, more satisfying than a win in some way, because of the some races. I mean, when the way I raced in Roth this year was beautiful, in the way that I was leading the entire day and seemed like I didn't have any struggles at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that is completely different. But this time, when you really work with yourself and the mental side of it, and you manage to come out on top, is also extremely rewarding. So
Yeah.
for me, it felt like a win, even though I was, of course, racing for the
Yeah.
actual
Just
win.
too
But
tired to
I
raise
think
your hands.
I was just so smashed, because
Yeah,
yeah, the
I believe
entire
so.
marathon, I didn't know how I would be able to get through it. So I was just so really tired when I crossed the finish line. So I didn't have anything to celebrate with or feel anything at
Oh,
all.
fantastic,
But now
fantastic, Magnus.
it feels pretty good.
Yeah, I love that. Your preparation for this year was indeed built on experience from 2 years ago, from 2022. So maybe talk a little bit about the biggest takeaways from this year for the next championship in 2 years.
Yeah. So it's difficult. We are still evaluating, of course, and of course, we rode really hard on the bike in the beginning, but still, I feel it's a bit weird how I blew up like that, and that is something we need to look into a little bit and see
Mm,
if it really was just too hard of a pace, or if there is something else. So that is something we need to. I don't have the answer on at the moment, and maybe not will find, but that is for sure something to consider for the race in 2 years, and just how tough the race is. I think when you train on Hawaii and the island, it is actually pretty manageable, even though you do some crazy hard sessions in training. But then that's also what I felt 2 years ago, is that the race kind of is very different in a way that is hard to describe, and it makes things much more difficult and harder. So it is maybe having the respect a little bit more of the island and the conditions. And of course, yeah, just we need to find out if it really was the pacing or what it was. But overall, I think we did pretty well in the lead up, and I don't think we made many mistakes in the lead up to the race and the training we did. So that is something I'm very proud of as well. And
mm-hmm,
then one takeaway could also be that you shouldn't focus too much. Of course, you need to notice where the main favorites are, but it's also important to do your own race. I think Sam, Christian, and I, we were obviously the three biggest favorites before the race, and everyone was talking about us and how it
mm-hmm,
would unfold between us. And maybe we shouldn't, or I shouldn't get caught too much up in their races, and maybe race a little bit on my own terms, which is that's at least easy to say now. But
mm-hmm.
had Sam managed to pull it off and just ridden away from us, it would maybe have been a different story. But so it's finding that balance between racing your competitors, but on an Ironman still sticking to your own plan.
Exactly, Magnus. You used to play a lot of football back in your teens, and if you had a defeat, the good thing about football is that next week there's another, there's
Yeah,
another.
yeah,
You can have payback pretty much straight away. But with the way we are racing now, there's 2 years to the next Kona, and Nice is quite a different race and a different strategy. So is that a little bit difficult for you and your team to, you know, you have to sit and be super patient to show that you were actually able to win this one.
Yeah, I think I would love to go back tomorrow and
Yeah,
redo the race, and I think also maybe that is what made guys like Sam and I and Christian as well do those kind of mistakes, is that we only get this chance every second year, and it is
yeah,
for sure by far the most difficult race in the world. So it used to be that you get here every year and therefore collect a lot of experience of what you can do and what you can't do here. But first of all, it was only our like second attempt, the all three of us. So it kind of, yeah, with only every second year, it makes it much more difficult, in my opinion, to get it right, because you don't have many tries. I'm very fortunate that I'm so young still, so I know I will have a few attempts still, but it makes it much more difficult because, yeah, traditionally you have seen that like first timers don't do really well. I know
mm-hmm.
Gustav won in his first race, but originally people used to spend many races here to get it right.
Exactly. Final question for you, Magnus. You go to race the T100 final, and I think you're still in the mix to. I think you're second right now, and still in the mix to win actually the entire series. But I believe it was last year you also raced a very late Ironman. But is it season off after T100, or what's the plan for?
Yeah, that is the plan as it stands now, is to take a break after T100 Dubai. It has been a long season and only raced like top level races. So
Mhm.
it is, I feel already now it's difficult for me to prepare for Dubai mentally and physically after Kona,
Yeah,
but we'll do our best, of course. But then we'll have to, yeah, I need to take a break after that and take some time off and focus on, yeah, maybe relaxing a little bit. It's been
yeah.
very long period into Kona, and then for next year, because Ironman changed the rules.
Exactly. They've changed the
Yeah,
qualification rules, right?
yeah. So it used to be that one, two, and three just had to validate, which was the reason I did late Ironman last year, was just to get it out of the way. But now I would have to do if I wanted to do a late Ironman, I would have to really do well in it at the same time and qualify by normal standards. So that makes it everything a little bit more tricky planning
Hmm.
next year as well.
Yeah. So you will actually have to find a race where you maybe don't have to find your AA plus game,
Mm.
but at least your so and so A game to qualify for Nice at least.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so now it's only the first place that gets the right to validate and not
Mm,
do it in the other way around. So it's, yeah, it's stiff. It will make for some decisions regarding planning next year.
exactly.
Also, if I want to do T100 series again or what I want to do.
Exactly. So if you race Ironman South Africa or Ironman Texas, watch out for for
Yeah,
Magnus.
those two.
No, I'm just kidding around. Magnus, I know you're super jet lagged, tired, smashed for a very good reason, but thank you so much for taking the time. You're always really kind to come here on the podcast to talk after your big races. Congratulations with an amazing results, and I am absolutely positive that either in Nice or Kona next year, you will be number one.
Thank you. Thanks. I was third last year and second now. So if the progression continues, that's what we are aiming for.
That's the logic of a true mathematician. Magnus, thank you so much. And for you guys watching, stay tuned.